So we've already determined that DNA is the main genetic information of the body. And this DNA is converted into a more readable form called mRNA. And this mRNA is converted into proteins, which basically allow for your cell to do its functions. This DNA is made of what we call genes. And these genes are very important because in order for a species to survive, it has to pass down its genetic information to its offspring. So in order to have you, your parents had to pass on their genes to you. And these genes are what's encoded in DNA. So there are many different genes, and these genes can act together to form what we call traits. So for example, whether your earlobes are detached or attached is determined by your particular genes. Same if you can roll your tongue or if you can't roll your tongue. So in many genes, there's something called a dominant allele and a recessive allele. So alleles are kind of like different versions of a gene. So if we use the example of eye color, if your dad has brown eyes and your mom has blue eyes, then the child will probably have brown eyes. And this is because in this example, brown is what we call dominant. So the dominant gene, which is the brown eye, which we say capital B, if they're combined with a lowercase b that you get from your mom, because it's dominant, that's what's going to be mainly expressed. And we call blue eyes, because when they're with brown eyes, they're not expressed. We call this the recessive allele. So again, the capital letter is going to be the dominant gene, the dominant allele, and the lowercase letter is going to be the recessive allele. So as we see, everyone has two alleles, and that makes a gene. And we usually, or scientists usually, mark off what the different genes that an organism might get based on the alleles that they have from their parents with something we call a Punnett square. So in a Punnett square, one parent has two different alleles, the other has two other different alleles, right? And they give each child one allele. So if we look at this one, the parent one gives this first child an uppercase B and gives the other child, or the second parent gives the child a lowercase b, right? And as we said, capital B is dominant, so that child is going to have brown eyes. You can see that the parent one has both capital B's, so we call them homozygous dominant. And parent two has both lowercase b, recessive genes, so we call them homozygous recessive. So in this case, all of the children are going to have a capital B, lowercase b allele, so they're going to show brown eyes. But we call this heterozygous. So if the child was uppercase B, we call it homozygous. Or if it's lowercase b, we call it homozygous. But because they have different alleles, one dominant, one recessive, we call them heterozygous. Now, if we were to do the same thing, but one parent is, or both parents are heterozygous, so uppercase b, lowercase b, uppercase b, lowercase b, and we cross a Punnett square, then each of the children have a different allele. They have a different combination of genes. So the first child gets a capital B from this parent, a capital B from this parent. So it's capital B, homozygous, right? So this one's going to have brown eyes. The second child is going to get the uppercase B from one parent, the lowercase b from the other parent. It's going to have uppercase b, lowercase b. So heterozygous, like we said we saw over here. And it's going to have brown eyes. Same thing's going to happen with this child. Now the last child is going to get lowercase b from this parent, lowercase b from this parent. So even though both parents have brown eyes, because they're both heterozygous, because they both have lowercase b alleles, this child is going to have blue eyes, and it's going to be homozygous for lowercase b, lowercase b. Now, it's important to know that the Punnett square reflects odds. So in this Punnett square, for instance, if these two parents have 4 children, right, they're likely to have one child that has a dominant homozygous gene, 2 children that are going to have the heterozygous gene, and one child that's going to have the homozygous recessive. So 3 children are likely to have brown eyes, and 1 child is likely to have blue eyes. But again, it's important to know that it only reflects odds. So for example, if a human has 4 children, it's possible that they can get all 4 of their children only having brown eyes, or they could have 2 children having brown eyes, 2 children having blue eyes. But if we look at another organism that can have a lot of offspring, a lot of children, like bacteria, if they have 100 children, it's more likely that 1/4 of them are going to have blue eyes and 3/4 of them are going to have brown eyes.